Today I'm going to show a little bit about how I manage airports in MyFlightbook. I've got currently about 60,000, give or take, airports in the system worldwide for a total of about 130 or 140,000 things that are classified along with airports, which includes a whole bunch of VORs and NDBs and airspace fixes and so forth. But today I'm going to talk about airports in particular. And I should actually clarify that airports mean airports, heliports, and seaports specifically. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means. I update the data from the FAA database 2 or 3 times a year, maybe. And I update worldwide data, which I get most of that data from a GitHub repository called Our Airports every couple of years. I'm a logbook, so I absolutely bias in favor of airports, and in particular trying to keep around old data as long as I possibly can. Unlike an FSB where you're doing flight planning and you need to always have current data because you're navigating by it or you're filing flight plans by it. A logbook is a historical record. So if I can keep around the airport that you landed at 20 years ago that's now a shopping mall, as long as possible, that's exactly what I want to do. And I should point out that airports come in three flavors. Well, obviously there's the airport, heliport, seaport flavors, but there are three different systems for naming them. And for the most part, names are unique within each of these systems, but they're not unique across them. And those three systems are IATA. This is what you use when you're booking a flight on a travel website or an airline. And they're all three-letter codes. ICAO, the International, I don't even remember what CAO, Civil Aviation Organization, I think it is, code. That's 4 characters. And the FAA assigns both 3 and 4 character codes to airports. And so a good example of this is Hawaii, Maui in particular. So Maui has an airline code, an IATA code of OGG. So if you book your flight on an airline website, you'll use OGG. But if you want to put it into a GPS, you need to use the ICAO code, which is PHOG. So for many, but not all airports in the US, you can, the difference between the FAA code and the ICAO code is just a leading K if you're in the continental US, or a little leading P if you're in Alaska and Hawaii. But not always. And there are airports that have FAA codes and don't have IATA codes or don't have ICAO codes and so forth. Under the covers, each airport just has a unique ID. And so you can have one airport that's in the airport in the database multiple times, once under its IATA code, once under its ICAO code, and once under its FAA code if it has both of those or all 3 of those. This simplifies a lot of database queries and allows for greater performance, but it does mean that there's some management tools that you need to do to handle these duplicate airports. Anyhow, so I'm going to start off here showing, this is what most of you have seen. This is the user view. If you go to airports, add, edit airports, you can put in a code, a name, facility type. These are all the different things. And again, today I'm focusing on airports, heliports, and seaports. But there are a bunch of nav aids there. And it shows you any airports that you've added into the system yourself. And by airports here, I'm referring to the whole gamut. These can be nav aids or things like that as well. But if you have data privileges as an admin on MyFlightbook, or if you're running your own MyFlightbook instance, because it is open source, then you will have an admin menu here, and there's a user airports option here. And it looks very, very similar, but isn't quite exactly the same. So if I pick that, there are 3 big differences, and I'll go over each of these in detail. The first one is simple. It's just a checkbox here, add as admin. Normally, if you add an airport or a fix to the system, it goes in with your username, so that as an admin, I can figure out if something came from a data source or from a user. And that helps me in reviewing airports, and it helps me in deciding, if I get a data update from the FAA, should I overwrite this or shouldn't I overwrite this? So if you check the box add as admin, then it will go in as a native airport. If that box is unchecked, then it goes in with your username. So down here is the second big difference at the bottom of the screen here, where I have, instead of just seeing my airports, which is what I saw on the previous screen. So I had my sample airport, and BG, Waterberg. I can see all airports that were created by all users, and I can review these. I can click on them and take a look at where they are. If there's something wrong with them, I can delete them, and it's just not something I ever really do, but it is something I can do in case there's a conflict that I need to resolve, and I might need to contact somebody. The third difference that you'll see on this screen, and which is where I'm going to spend most of my time today, is on these three sections here: bulk import, duplicate airports, and geocoding of airports. And I'm going to do these for a few reasons from the bottom up, just because I think it's simplest from the bottom up. So geocoding. If I go manage georeference, well, all airports are, of course, geocoded in the sense that they have a latitude and longitude. But in MyFlightbook, I also try to reverse geocode them to give them a top-level administrative region and a secondary administrative region, which are admin 0 and admin 1. Admin 0, I usually just call country, because most of the time, admin 0 is a country. Admin 1, in the US, it's a state. In Canada, it's a province. In other regions, it might be even a county or otherwise a named region. So the reason I'm being a little bit of a stickler here on things like admin 1 and country is I'm not making political determinations here. I can't stress this enough. Specifically, a good example here is that Greenland, which is not a country, it's administered by Denmark. I have Greenland as a top level area here, so I call it country. It's not really a country. But it has subregions, and so I put it up to the country level. I'm not making a political determination there. It's just a top level geographic kind of boundary. Anyhow, as people add airports to the system or nav aids, I like to go in and review them and make sure that they get coded to the correct top level and secondary region. And so the tool here will find airports that match a given country name or a given state or province or admin 1 name, and I can get up to 200. I can specify how many such airports I want to find. So if I click next set, this is looking for the ones that are missing here. Then it's going to think for a second. Okay, and here are a bunch of airports, results 0 through 27. So I've got 27 airports here that I need to tag. So here's one that's in Amahai Airport. If I click on it, I can see it on the map above, and I can zoom in or out to make sure that it looks like it's in the right place. Make sure that, yep, there's actually an airport there, and that's correct. Super. So I can either hit edit and type, say, Indonesia. And you'll notice it's up in the wrong spot, but you'll notice that there's auto completion on this so that I don't have any typographical errors. And I can type in an admin. But what can often be a lot easier than that, and I would just hit update if I wanted to. But one of the things that it does is it looks at the nearest airports it can find. And if you zoom around here, should be able to see, well, maybe there aren't any other airports on this island here. It'll find the closest other airport, and it'll suggest a top level and a secondary designation to use. And if I just hit use, then boom, it's now designated. I had mentioned Greenland before. So here is Bluey East 2, and here it is. It's always the one that's right in the middle. And look, there's an airport over here BGSG. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, which is in Greenland. And again, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that second level administrative region. But I'm not seeing any other administrative boundaries here. So I'm just going to click use. And so I can go through and very quickly reverse geocode airports in this way. But you can also do other fun things here. Like if I want to see all of the airports in, say, Rhode Island, I can type United States. And again, you notice it auto-completes. Rhode Island. It auto-completes in the wrong position, but it is an admin tool. There are all the airports that are currently in Rhode Island. And I can see them down here, and I can zoom in on each one of them. So that's reverse geocoding. This is how I determine how many states have you visited, how many countries have you visited, what do I want to color in on the map. And that's really the only thing I use it for. All right, let's go back to the Edit Airports screen. The second thing I wanted to show here is duplicate airports. So remember I said that an airport might have 2 or even 3 different codes, one assigned by the FAA, one assigned by the ICAO, and one assigned by IATA. It really doesn't matter to any great degree. The only place where it is useful to consolidate these, though, is if you are, well, there are, I suppose, 2 scenarios. One is if you're using the mobile apps, then when you auto-detect takeoffs and landings, it uses the GPS to find the closest airport and use that in your route of flight field and fill that in. And if you have, say, let's say JFK Airport in New York, if you have JFK slightly next to KJFK, then if you depart on one side of the airport, you might get JFK, and if you depart on the other side of the airport, you might get KJFK. And so there's a consistency issue. Whereas if I consolidate those in to a single point, then I have JFK and KJFK at the exact same location. And in that situation, the apps know enough to try to use the 4-letter code over the 3-letter code if possible, just because ICAO is it tends to be a more unambiguous naming system for these airports. But the other reason to do this is that codes do change. Airports close, or a new airport gets built 10 miles away and gets the old airport's designator and things like that. So it is useful to be able to designate an airport code as being the preferred code to use. So again, I can pick just for the sake of performance and limiting what gets shown on the screen, I can say start at 0 and give me the first 50 duplicates, and I can pick up at 50 and get another 50 and things like that. And I can even say limit to dupes of a specific airport. But let me just see what are duplicates in the system right now. So I'm going to click next set of dupes, and it's giving me the first 3. Great. So here is a cluster of 3 airports, OASN, UTIC, and UTOD. So all 3 of those look like ICAO codes. And it gives me a little triangle lat. That means delta latitude and delta longitude, which tells me that they're not quite co-located. So if I click on this, there is OASM. There is UT1C. Ooh, it's on the other side of the river. In fact, it's in a different country. That's one of these is Afghanistan, I think, and one is, yeah, there we go. Tajikistan, and one is Afghanistan. And then there's UTOD and OASN. So I can review all of these, or sorry, the third one was UT1C. Anyhow, I can review all of these, and if I decide that, oh, these are 3 slightly different but very similar codes for the same airport, I can merge one from the other. Here, let's actually take a look at the next one. There has a no delta, so these are all at the exact same location, and I can consult another reference and decide which one of these is the code that I should use if you say nearest and you're on the field at one of these airports. So that's how I can manage duplicates. Where I wanted to spend most of my time, though, in this video is talking about bulk import of airports. And that is the stuff right up here. And so let me just refresh the screen here. Okay, so the idea here is that the FAA every 56 days publishes an update of their copy of the database. Our airports is a GitHub repository of worldwide airports, and that's, well, continuously updated. And if I want to update airports, doing it manually one at a time is just going to be a bear of a task to do. So I have a bulk airports import utility, and it works just like flight import and aircraft import in MyFlightbook. So if I switch over here, this is what an import file looks like. It has 4 fields that every airport has to have: type, name, latitude, and longitude. And as usual, the top row here is the name of the data that's in each column. And then underneath that is the data itself, 1 entry per airport. And then I have 3 additional fields. I have to have at least one of these fields. I can have any one, but I have to have at least one of them. I have to have one of an ICAO identifier, an IATA identifier, and an FAA identifier. I can also add a country and an admin 1 column. And so when I import from the FAA, I actually use that. When I import from our airports, I don't use that. And a big part of that is for spelling issues. When you're transliterating from non-Latin alphabets, there are all sorts of different spellings that can be used. And so I want to make sure I'm using consistent naming for the particularly for admin 1. It's less of an issue at the top level country code. So this is what it looks like. And if I come in here and I say choose file, choose that file, and I say import. All right, here's what's going to happen. There are 4 columns in the table that comes in. The leftmost column here has the data to be imported. Here is the FAA code that was specified. Here is the ICAO that was specified. If there was an IATA, like on the next one, that gets specified. It does not say what the actual airport code is because that is yet to be defined. It's got the name of the airfield. In this case, I didn't specify a country or an admin 1, so it says none for both of those. But like I said, when I import from the FAA, those get specified. And then, of course, what's really nice is it's got a clickable latitude, longitude, so that I can see what is this airport that you're trying to import. Then, what the system has done, I could have literally thousands of airports in the file that I'm importing. Well, I don't care about the ones that I already have. So the system has already gone through and looked up every single one of these airports by any and all of the codes that were specified for it and decided for each one, do I have it in the database? Do I have it in the database, but the position is off by more than, what is it? I think it's 0.01 in latitude or longitude. And less than 50 nautical miles, in which case maybe it's just in the wrong position, and I'll show what that looks like here in a moment. Or is it further distance, or it's the wrong type or something like that, in which case, something's going to be wrong. So here, the file that I'm importing says, hey, this Abbey Lex airfield, which I'm looking up at here, looks like it's somewhere in Ireland, has a code of PAE from the FAA and EIIH from ICAO. For the sake of the demo, the PAE is made up. That's actually my home airport in Seattle. But I wanted to show that because you can see here's the FAA airport that the system found already in the database. And if I click on it, there's Payne Field. And if I decide that, that's incorrect, it really should be what I'm importing, then I can just say overwrite. I'm not going to, but that would take what was in the field to be imported and pull it over and overwrite what's currently in there under that FAA designation. Or I have EIIH which matches the ICAO code here. And in fact, you can see distance 0.0 nautical miles. It matches the location, but I have it in here as a heliport under its ICAO code rather than an airport. And I skipped over this before, but you have to have a type field, and that needs to have A for airport, H for heliport, or S for seaport. There's a few other letters it can have for, or some of them are 2-letter codes for various navigation aids, but we're talking about places you can land. So A, H, or S. So in this case, I could overwrite it, which will just take everything that's over here and overwrite it. So the name in that case would change from Midland to Abilex. Or I can just click Update Type, and it'll pull over the A for airport and overwrite the H. Now, suppose that you can see here, if you look carefully, you can kind of, whoa, sorry. Stop moving around so much. You can see there's a grass runway here. Sometimes the data that you're importing just doesn't have a whole lot of precision in the latitude and longitude, and so maybe it'll be over here. And the actual airport is better placed over here. So what you can do in that case is you can click on it and say where you want it. And if you say use map location, then any overwrite operation or location update operation will use the position that you clicked rather than what's being imported. Let's take a look at the next airport here, Sindhudurg Airport. And that looks about right. And in fact, I have SDW in Bangladesh, but I'll let the Bangladesh one stay. That's under SDW, but here I'm talking about importing VOSR, which looks like it's in, I'd guess, India. Yep, that's India. And it's not in the system under VOSR. So there's a button here that says Add ICAO. So if it can't find the FAA code that you specified, or the IATA code that you specified, or the ICAO code that you specified, it'll have a button here. Now in this case, it looks like it's got the location right on the terminal here. I tend to prefer to use the middle of the runways, but yeah, it doesn't really make much difference. But again, if I did that, I could say use map location and add ICAO, and now it turns green to show that I've added that. And then the last way that airports will typically come in for something like this is here, here's Ben Gurion Airport in Israel. And I've got both. It's got TLV and LLBG. And I have both of those in the system, both as Ben Gurion. And look at where they both are on the airport, whereas what's being imported looks like it's more centrally located. So I could decide that where it's centrally located is good, or maybe I want to put it over here or something like that, in which case I would say use map location. But otherwise I can simply say update location on both of these, and it will use the imported or the map location to update the position of the airport in the MyFlightbook database. And that's how I manage data on MyFlightbook for airports. Let me know if you have any questions.